Great. So everyone understands Group Project 1. Now there's a lot of code to kind of fill in here. So the first place I want to go is demo some code for the first time in the class. So I'm going to go into Unit 1, and we've talked about cores, and we've talked about the sample IM, what to write for IM. And so many of you probably have an IM role that's ready to go. And you all are probably saying, okay, that's great. I did the IM part. Now, in the past, I have kind of scrunched IM and Facebook and the cloud together, and it takes people longer. So I think that I want to experiment with giving it out in little pieces and seeing what people do, and then have the groups kind of consume it and see if that will, get us more content, speed it up a little bit. So I'm interested in seeing your success. I have compressed your role. I think I do Spring Roll or Joel Roll? I think Spring Roll makes me think maybe this is the one. That is going to be the ARN, or the Amazon resource name, for this IAM role. And it's interesting when you look at an IAM role, because it has that word role versus a policy. If I click on that policy, the policy also has an ARN. And that word policy is going to be embedded within the policy ARN as well, which means that if you ever see an ARN that has policy in it, you know that that isn't going to work. And we're waiting for this to load up. There we go. So policy has a policy in the... I have made websites for you guys where I put a policy inside my configuration instead of a role. And so I don't want you to, waste 5 minutes, freaking out about that. Does that make sense? Programming has a certain amount of drama that comes with it. So what I did is I chose my bucket and I uploaded 2 bits of code from my GitHub. One file called QueryCore and another file called IndexS3 demo. And those 2 are going to be present within your S3. So if you would you don't need to upload those because they're not going to work right now for you. But let me just kind of demo how they work. So let's go to QueryCore first. So let's open up QueryCore. Now, QueryCore is a dumb name. That should be call it like initial login.html. That would be nicer. QueryCore, what we used to do is I used to say, hey, let's wind up and give the kids a real zinger of an introductory lesson. So we taught them how to query a database as their first exercise in the cloud. And they did fine. They did well at it. But it took them 2 weeks to do it. And so my thoughts are, why don't we just give a simpler explanation? Treat the next generation better. So let's open up QueryCore. And this is what QueryCore looks like. It's just a button. It's just a ginormous button that says login. I'm going to press the login. And it's going to ask Facebook for access to use this app. Now, this is assuming that I have already logged into Facebook. So I'm going to press cancel, and I just want to bring it through its paces because I'm already logged into Facebook. You probably are too. Probably all of your users are already logged into Facebook. That's good. That's good for us. But I'm going to log out of Facebook. So I'm sitting there. I'm logged out. And I want to go back to this page and I want to press my login button. And it sees that I'm not logged in. And that's a little bit of JavaScript that's present within this code that I'd like to go over. So we're grabbing an SDK within the head using a script tag where we're going to grab some source code from Facebook itself. And that's the first time in our class that we've used the head tag. And we're also going to use the Amazon SDK as well. The button itself is called login. Remember we were talking about IDs in JavaScript? It says login right there, but it's actually visible from the JavaScript with the ID of login. And later on, we're going to kind of say, hey, go into the web page and get the element that's called login. And when you click, fire the following function. So that's the purpose of putting an ID on a login. And then we have another ID called output. Then we have another ID called FB root that Facebook is going to put there by itself. So let's go back to the page and let's go back to what it's capable of. So this is a pop-up. Your browser might need to enable pop-ups. Most likely you guys have your browsers on high security. You might need to loosen it up so this page gives you pop-ups. As you can see, that's a separate modal window. That's not a piece of HTML. That's a separate instance of the browser. That creates a little bit of a container for Facebook. So we're going to go log in. Great. You can see OAuth channel, right? OAuth is operating here. What's happening here is you're saying, okay, now we need to make sure that you give Facebook permission to send a token out. And you want to authorize this app for use within Facebook. Go, okay, you're good to go. Now, what I've done is I've coded this page so once we get some credentials through Amazon, I'm going to say, hey, console.log is like system.out.println in Java. Console.log is actually going to print to the page, hey, I just did an authentication with AWS. Now I'm going to move on to this page. And I put that console.log just to show off to other programmers. But also console.log helps me to inspect a piece of code and understand that I just authenticated. And when I go to the console, it's going to print that. The console is going to be invisible. And let me just show the inspect element piece. I'm using the latest Safari, so it looks different from the last time we talked. This is the console right here. And everything that comes back from the page, all the error messages get written here. So if it doesn't compile right, it shows up in the errors or warnings or all. I use console.log as kind of a sacred item because whenever I'm using a new piece of code, I want to use console.log to kind of print the value of variables. Give myself a message, hey, this just happened, right? And then what I'm going to do is here's a new piece, here's a new technique for you. Window.location.href will redirect the page somewhere else. And the redirected URL, you guys are pros with URL. Now I'm going to redirect the page to index S3 demo once I have acquired authentication credentials from Amazon and I've passed Amazon my Facebook Access token. And Amazon says, cool, I will accept the login permissions from a Facebook OAuth token with that app ID and your credentials in it. So that handshake that you guys were working on, now it's going to begin to work for you. This, like 4 or 5 lines, is how you get access to Amazon. Now, if that doesn't work, I'm going to put issue logging in. So it's going to kind of complain in the console. It's going to say issue logging in somewhere around here. But I survived it, so we're over here. Now, the login button is there. I think I'd like to delete that login button because you no longer need it. But I want to choose a file. And let's grab an image. Here's a cool image of my guy playing some football. And let's go choose. And now the name of that image is now right here. I think that's kind of cool because as programmers, you kind of say, well, how do I get the name of that thing so I can maybe put the name of that photograph in a database or something? That's a cool thing in itself. Now I want to upload it to the cloud. See how it changes on my status. Now it's going to do a little round trip. I think the size of the image, it's maybe having some trouble with it. Let's take a look at that. That image is 1.7 megabytes. That's fine. It's kind of big. You know, the web likes images that are really small. Oh, don't want to give away a password. How about some ad codes? So it's kind of waiting for a return. And maybe what we need to do is we need to, oh, there it goes. It worked. Okay. I thought I'd maybe get an image somewhere. Now what I have it doing right now is it's going to kind of give me a list of all the images that I have up on my S3 right now. So it actually uploaded to this folder called Facebook, and that's my Facebook user ID. And these are the images that are in there right now. This is the image, the screenshot, and I can refresh that. And so the image that I uploaded is now at that URL. And you can see it's at S3 US West 2 Amazon.com sample starter bucket, da-da-da. And here's that image. It's super big. Whoop, that's the image, right? Doing some football. But you notice that's the URL right there. And what's interesting, what I want to have happen is I want to have that image, that nice image, loading right here, but it's failing. And so when we look inside the code, we realize that I need to update the code so that the URL of that image is accurate. And so that's a little to-do item. So let's kind of go through the code now that you know what the sample is going to do. Okay? You guys have a little bit of work to do where Query Core is that initial login page. Let's go back. That's this login page. And so you've got your script and your head, you got your button, and these are going to be commented lines, and maybe I need to delete those. But usually once I get something working, I upload it pretty quickly. And maybe I need to delete that comment, but you can ignore these lines. But what I have is a Facebook user ID. You guys need to put your app ID from Facebook in right there, and you need to put your role arm from AWS right there. Moving down, what the page is going to do is it's going to offer a window that will work asynchronously. It's going to offer a pop-up, which is a window that is an asynchronous window. Asynchronous is when something is on a different timetable and is operating independently from something else. When they're synchronous, they're synchronized, they're working together. When they're asynchronous, they're not working together, they're separate, and they have different resources. So Facebook's going to open up a pop-up, and then the Facebook API, it's kind of like an object in Java. It's going to initialize with the app ID that you've provided right here, and it's going to send that app ID back to Facebook. Then it's going to load the login button with the following function. Get a response back from Facebook, and if you are authorized, then go ahead and send Amazon, which has its own object, the AWS object, the Facebook token for web identity, and then send that app ID to the role arm. So that completely pulls upon and leverages all the work that you guys have done thus far, and is using your security system to ensure that a solid handshake is taking place between these two sites. And then it means that once you're successful, you can go ahead and move on to the next page using window.location. Now, again, this word asynchronous comes up where we want to load up the Facebook JavaScript SDK down here. This is going to be code that you probably recognize from yesterday when you were working with the Facebook login code. And Facebook actually wants you to embed these lines. We don't really have access to all of that source code. I can't show you what all.js looks like because it was called from Facebook and it's compiled by your browser independent of you guys. So that's a piece of nice technology that Facebook has supplied to help get you logged in to your site. So let's go on to the photograph upload piece. Okay, now we're on the photo upload, so let's log in. And you realize that I'm already authenticated, so I already get moved over to the page. And my console is pretty clean. It says you're already, you're ready to go. So I have a title for the page. I have the same script embeds. This login button can get removed, but we have the most important button that's called the file chooser. And that file chooser is going to be this button that says choose file. That's a file chooser. And what we're going to do is we're going to put an upload button that says upload to S3. That's going to be that upload button right there. We have a results div, and then we're also going to have an image at the bottom that's going to be called I. So once we successfully upload something, we're going to actually show you the image inside of the image source. And that's how you code an image. You go to the image and ID, and then we'll give it a link to that image later. Does that make sense? So you're doing real good. Now you need to have your role ARN at the top and your app ID, which you already have. And we're going to take that Facebook user ID, and then down here, we're going to check the login state. This is going to be a little bit different because this is what we call a persistent login. So we're going to get the login status. Then we're going to run status change callback, which is status change callback up here. So we're going to get the response back from Amazon, and we're going to kind of log to kind of keep our place, keep track of where we are. And if now you're logging into Amazon. Now you finished your Facebook piece. Now you're logging into Amazon, right? And so if you're connected to Amazon, you're going to grab your S3 bucket right here. And you're going to offer the credentials to that bucket being equivalent to your web identity that you've established partially using your Facebook credentials. And now with that role ARN, you've approved to move in. This is the way that Amazon, I think, is going to be one of the most dominant technologies in web development in the future, because this means that we can move past hard coding passwords into websites. You guys are about to get access to your cloud, a CIA, a industrial strength production cloud, without hard coding any passwords into your browser. And it makes it very hard for very entry-level hackers to get into your site. This has made 99.999% of hackers incapable. The script kiddies will never get into your site. Sorry. But we're going to grab the role ARN and your token, and now you're going to assign a Facebook user ID to become your user ID inside of Amazon. We're going to enable the button here to become visible, and the button is going to be tied to the upload button. So once you have authenticated to Amazon, the upload button becomes visible. And that was a piece of code that a student contributed. I'm really proud of that line. We had a student who realized that needed to be there, and he put it in there. He did a good job. Now, if you're not authorized, you don't get to go in, and we complain. Otherwise, if we still have nothing happening, we're going to have the page complain. Now, once we get finished with the authentication piece, we're going to go down here where we're going to establish access to our bucket. So you're going to put your bucket in right here. And then we're going to start to talk to S3. So we're going to grab the file. The upload button is going to cause us to grab the name of the file. Then we're going to put into the results div. We're going to empty that out. And then we're going to configure the name of the file as it's going to exist up in the cloud. Now, this is some Star Trek stuff that's happening, where the file is going to get broken down into many small pieces using TCP/IP, and we have the opportunity to give the file a brand new name in the cloud if we wanted to. Now, it just so happens that we're going to take the name as it exists on the desktop, and then we're going to assign your Facebook user ID to operate in front of that. Now, we're going to create another folder on S3 for the purpose of uploading this file. So you'll notice that there's a whole other folder here called Facebook and your Facebook user ID, and all your files are going to go into that folder, which is pretty ninja, for a first-time user. And then we'll configure the name of the file. We'll set it to public read so that it will become publicly viewable, on the web once it goes and is uploaded. Then we set the URL to where it's going to be once it's finished. And this is where the code is breaking right now. This is not a good URL. You'll notice that this image is located at S3 US West to Amazon.com, AmazonAWS.com. That's not the right URL right there. So this image would show up once we uploaded it right here, but it's not right now because this image is incorrect. So what we do is we go ahead and we put the file up in the bucket, and then once that's successful, we grab the image div, or the image called I. We grab this. And you're doing well by sticking with me. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm kind of smothering you right now, but you're doing well if you're here already. Your image is called I. And so what JavaScript is saying, it says, okay, go into the document and grab the element that's called I, which is that image, and then set the URL of that image to this. This means that once you upload it and Amazon says, good to go, you're done, now I'm going to load that image below so that you can see it, which is, I think, what a good professional page does. So these two lines help you to see the image once it's uploaded, which is pretty efficient. It's pretty powerful. Now, if that doesn't work, then it's going to complain and say, sorry, we just couldn't get there. And then we have a list object, which kind of helps you to prove that you've uploaded it successfully. It will give you all the names of everything that's inside of your bucket. And we'll talk more about this for each as we go. What it does is it just kind of iterates. It uses a for loop to iterate all the names of all the files that are in your bucket, and it prints them all to the page. So this is actually pretty ninja. The for each is pretty ninja right here too. But I'm not going to emphasize that. That doesn't need to be what we focus on. Right now, I just want to find a way to leverage your cloud security mechanism, your authorization and authentication that you've built thus far, and give you a chance to see it in motion. Now, just a few notes here. You guys don't really need to code this example, but you need to configure it so that you get it to work, and you got to be able to dissect it like a frog in biology class. Does that make sense? You want to be able to take what you want from this example and implement it. So what I do is I give you some working code and ask you to configure it. So your ARN goes right here, your app ID goes here. You can let it run. Okay. Now you need to put the name of your bucket right here. If you're on US West 2, then you leave it. If you're in Ohio, you're US East 2. If you're in North Virginia, it's US East 1. If you're in Northern California, it's US West 1. Does that make sense? You probably know that based on the configuration of the bucket. It'll say so right here. And I think you can Google for Amazon S3 region names, and it's probably listed what all, if you have a bucket in, in Sao Paulo, they'll tell you what that is, Latin America 1 or something. And once that's done, I think all you need to do is just customize this URL with this, the actual URL, S3, your starter bucket, and then you're ready to go. Does that make sense? You're going to be rewarded for all your hard work thus far, and you're going to have some real working production code for your website. Okay, so you're in a real nice place and a real good time. You have 7 to 9 days to work on this group project. You're going to do great. Have fun with it. Chat it up. Talk it amongst your group members.